The 5 Podcast.
5
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 5 Podcast. It's your host, Haley. And today we are here with Rachael Flick. She's the host of the Hopecast podcast, a twin mom, a trauma expert and educator, public speaker, Blue Line warrior, follower of Christ, and she is a police widow due to her husband, Micah Flick, being tragically taken in the line of duty. I want to preface this interview by saying it may be a trigger warning for some. It may be very emotional and hard to hear. And I mostly want to respect Rachael and her family. So, Rachael, I will only have you answer what you can or what you're willing to answer. And I also want to share, again, a special thank you for being so strong enough to share moments and memories of you and Micah's story. So, for our listeners who don't know you or your husband's story, give us just give us a quick bio about you.
Okay.
And then we will peel back the layers as we dive deeper on all things we talked about above and more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I am Kansas born and bred. I did have electricity, counter to what some people thought when I was growing up, that there were no covered wagons. But I came out to Colorado after I got my bachelor's in exercise science to go to a leadership training institute and fell in love with the mountains here. It's just a beautiful place to live. And when I was finished with that, I wanted to move and stay here. And my first job that I got at the YMCA, I met this guy, and he was a regular at Tuesdays at 1 o'clock every week. He was very consistent, which would prove to be something that was core to who he was, as the story later reveals. But we met and married in 9 months. And then 3 years later, we had the twins. I started getting my master's in counseling at that time. And Micah was going back to school to finish his bachelor's and get his master's in leadership. So he was working nights. I mean, it was crazy in that season. Um, I was serving in women's ministry at my church for the Mothers of Preschoolers ministry and kind of honing my speaking chops there. When I spoke at Micah's funeral, I had been speaking, and people just didn't know it. Like, the family didn't know it, friends didn't know it. And so just growing in, um, caring for others and learning about grief and trauma through my own studies there with school, and um, taking care of my family and living with a man who he really struggled to sleep. Nights were so hard for him. He looked like he had a communicable disease. I mean, poor guy. Like, he would rather get up at the crack of dawn than, stay up at night. And so,
Yeah, I know all
um,
too well those night shifts.
oh, oh, I think some people are made for them, but there's not very many people who are made for them. Yeah, so we were just kind of trucking along in our life and working, and the twins were like 6, and we were selling our home, looking for a new place. We were temporarily living with Micah's parents, and um, I was starting a practice with, I'm a birth photographer and a doula, and love those new babies coming into the world. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and serving in this ministry. And then Micah shifts to investigations, and I felt this huge weight of relief come off of me. Um, and thinking, great, like, he's not the first guy on the scene. And that's going to be safer for us. That's going to protect us. And then obviously, February 5th, 2018, he gave his life for that cause, and my entire life changed. And now I speak and try to serve the Thin Blue Line family and law enforcement officer spouses and partners, and talk about, PTSD and how can we better serve our officers. And it's been 7 years since Micah passed, and the twins are 14. So I am like full tilt sports and activities. And my daughter has a play on this weekend, and just um, really pouring my life into them. And then wherever I can through podcasting, and I'm working on a book.
Oh my gosh. I was gonna ask you later if you're gonna write a book because I definitely think you should. It's
Thank you.
interesting to hear that you were practicing speaking and going to school for
Mhm.
counseling
Right?
and all these things that kind of I don't it sounds bad, but like align with, what's has happened and what you're doing
I
now.
agree. I agree with
It,
you.
it's wow. Yeah. I was gonna ask you about how you met Micah. It sounds like you met him at the
Mhm.
YMCA.
Yep.
And how did you know that he was the one?
you know, um, I at first was working in the weight room as an employee, and actually he was working there also. But because he had been accepted to the next class for the sheriff's office, he was like big time phasing out, only coming in to work out. And they make a big deal about, being a third place for people where they can find community and hang out and make friends at the gym. And so they said, when you see regulars, like, take the time to go and acknowledge them, get to know them, talk with them for a bit. So I was like, hey, I see this guy every Tuesday at 1 p.m. I'll go up to him and say hello. And it didn't take long that I just started to go, "Huh, like, I wonder, like, what his faith is. I wonder what his values are. I wonder," like, I started to get curious and ask more intentional questions. And, um, the more questions he answered, the more interested I was. And then we kind of, um we're both like fitness nerds, and he didn't ask me out for like a month. And I was like, what is his problem? Like, I can see him checking out my butt in the mirror at the gym. Like, I know he's interested. But we were working out like 45-minute ab routines. Like, he would do his workout and then I would jump in, and like, he was such a weightlifting guy. And so he was working out a different set of muscles 6 days a week. Like, I still remember our traps workout, and I couldn't move my neck for 3 days because I was a runner and a
Like,
swimmer and a fitness instructor and, like, not a weightlifter,
I'm
right?
doing
And
all this and you still haven't asked me out? Like,
I know. It's like I've never worked my abs harder in my life. But yeah, he finally was like, "Hey, you wanna go to dinner with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I do." And so, honestly, I think both of us were kinda primed to be ready. And, um, he was 23, I was 24. We weren't cynical, we were just open and excited to get to know each other. And that chemistry developed quickly between us. And um, I think he told me he loved me like 8 weeks in. Like, I've told my kids, I'm like, "You better not get married in 9 months." Like, now knowing how much time I had with him, I'm grateful for every month and every year. But,
yes.
it was very, like, fast and furious. And he's like, "I don't wanna rush anything." This was, like, June, he proposed to me. He's like, "What do you think? Like, August? Like, can" I mean, the man was ready. He's like, "What's the deal? Like, get a dress, get a cake, let's go." So,
I love it. I
it was a
love it.
long wait for him till November, and he still tried to get me to elope.
So he was ready. I mean, he took long to ask you out, but the minute he finally got the
When he
guts,
knew,
he was
he
ready.
knew. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I do think when men know, they know.
Mhm.
I
I've
do.
I've heard that.
And I think they
Yeah.
know quick.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So he's a police officer when you meet him.
Mhm. Yeah.
Did you have any police in your family or anything? Or were you like, oh my God, I'm about to date a police officer? How did you feel?
Girl, I was, like, so oblivious. Like, I had never considered a police officer life. I didn't know any police officers personally. I didn't really track the news, um, in relation to that type of politics. Um, and all I was thinking was like, he's got a solid job, like, he's ready to build a life together. Um, you always need police, so that's job security. Like, I was blindsided by the life. Like, all of it was just, um, like that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like, he goes down the tunnel and it's like all of these images whizzing past him and he's like, "Ah!" Like, that
Yes.
was me. That was me jumping onto the, Thin Blue Line wife train.
And do you know why Micah chose this career or his reasons? What
You know,
inspired him?
Micah was definitely like, if you look at archetypes, Micah was definitely a warrior, right? Like, he valued, um, being protective. He cared for his body well. He trained in, BJJ and grappling, and he loved weightlifting. And he was a very excellent athlete. Like when he went through the academy, he got top scores in, defensive driving and on the range and those kind of things. So it definitely lined up with like his gift set of what he was good at. And then from a heart perspective, he valued integrity, valued seeing the right thing being done, and he said he wanted to bring justice for the victims of crime,
And it's like those are the people we need most.
right? I mean,
People just like him.
I didn't know it until after he passed away. It was kind of, fun to get to know him this way, that his coworkers just started telling me how they knew him, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, he was the golden
Yes.
boy. He was, like, the poster child of the sheriff's office." Like, all the, leadership loved him, and I was like, "Huh, I thought all cops were just like him," but no, he was, you know
No, they're not. Not all of them, but I would like to say that we all have that heart where we go
Yeah,
into it,
yeah,
not for anything else, but, like, it's not for the money.
yeah,
You don't make that much, it's
yeah,
a solid it's okay,
mhm,
a good lifestyle, but you're not gonna be a millionaire.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, you can raise a family and you can help people and
mhm,
that's
yeah.
pretty good. You're not
I
gonna get
think
thanked a lot. You're not gonna make a ton of money, but you did
I hope that this will come off with the humor that it's intended, but I know a lot of cops now, and
Oh, of course.
I think cops are like cats, right? Like, they do not, like, follow in a line. They don't love, like, structure. They like to, have the opportunity to handle a case, like, with their intuition and what they're interested in and following their gut and, getting stuff done on their time. And, like, Micah was, like, deadline guy and be there and take the most amount of evidence you could possibly take at a scene. And, like, I think a lot of cops are a lot more go with the flow.
Yeah, I'm definitely more go with the flow myself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's what the average is that I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you know if he had any pushback from, like, friends or family when he chose this career?
If he did, he didn't tell me. I kind of think the family, like his parents and stuff, were just proud of him for starting into this career. I don't think we ascribe to it the gravity, of it, that, what it costs you in the toll of human trauma and, the things you have to see and how you have to guard your heart in order to survive the job. I think that was new for all of us. And then, like, his best friend's dad was like a lieutenant at the police department, and they thought very highly of him. So like they knew superficially of law enforcement. So I don't think people were like, you shouldn't do this.
It was more like a learning experience for everyone involved.
Everybody involved.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but Micah served on the department for 11 years.
Mhm.
Can you tell us how you navigated the early stages of his career and your marriage? I know you had 2 children.
Mhm.
Um, how was that, the kids with, like, a police dad and
Mhm.
this, like you said, Alice in
Yeah.
Wonderland, things flying everywhere. I'm sure you had, a lot on your plate, especially with twins.
Yes.
How did you navigate the kids and your marriage having a police dad?
Well, getting married was just a big transition in general. I had been living in a house with 5 other women, and so there was always somebody around and, you wanted to watch a show together, like go shopping or take a run, like there was somebody there who wanted to hang out. And so Micah was working swings when we got married, and, and I was working, like, a day shift. So, all of a sudden, like, immediately, I've got all of this time to myself, and it was kind of, like, shocking to me. Like, I was thinking, kind of the stereotypical, like, hanging out after work and having dinner together and that kinda
Oh,
stuff, and,
right.
if I would stay up late, like, I could make a crock pot meal and he could have something, like, at 11 p.m. when he got home, you know? Um and so that was really, like, just the shift work. Even though my parents were nurses, I didn't really connect the dots that it would be similar for law enforcement. And so that was like what does it even mean to be married right now? Like, we're building this life together, but you're gone a lot. And Micah was like maybe an extroverted introvert. I mean, he truly was pretty extroverted, but he could turn it on for people at work. But then when he got home, he was done. And so he didn't wanna go have,
Battery
like, a
drained.
social life. Battery was drained. And so, um, he wasn't, like, super excited about, going to dinner with our friends or being in a Bible study or, like, we did make some time for that, but not like I had those unspoken expectations that we have when we go into a relationship, like, I wanted to do life with him, and there was I know many spouses can relate to this, that you have to craft a life, that's largely independent because of being on call and shift work and, this duty requirements, and so that was pretty stunning. Having kids, Micah, thankfully, during that season, went to the courthouse, so he started working banker's hours, which was a huge gift. Um,
That's
and
great.
yeah, and then he took FMLA for me when I had the twins, and so he was actually home with me for, like, 2 months, which I do not know how I would have done it, any other way, honestly. Um but I loved getting to see this side of him come out because, like, when you have twins, you, like, learn to double carry them, like, you'll stack them on top of each other or have 2 hands and, walking down the stairs with it like, there's
You
just
probably got
something
biceps.
very endearing, about watching him be a dad, and then as they grew, um, he just was intentional, he made time for them. Even when he was tired, he greeted them, he connected with them, he saw them, and, played special games and created activities and, um, took them to go fishing and played football with Levi. And Eliana loved to draw, so he would take her to IHOP and have pancakes and draw with her, and that was so special time for them. So, I think he was unique in his devotion that despite the exhaustion and the trauma and the struggle with sleeping and the 90-hour work weeks and like all the things that began to come with different departments, he would still show up for them.
And, you know, it's hard when so a lot trying to see where I'm gonna go with this. A lot of people end up dating or marrying people who are also first responders
Mm,
because of kind of what you explained. Like it's really hard to adjust and you kind of feel like you're alone a lot because of the
mm,
hours and your regular friends are going out to dinner or these Saturday nights out
mhm.
like
Yep.
everybody else. Christmas, I'm sure that you had some with even with the kids where he couldn't be there at either
Right.
night or in the morning,
Right.
and that's why a lot of us have stuck together, and I
Mhm.
think that even on top of what we're gonna learn about you and Micah, this is also a great message to other men or women who are dating someone in law enforcement that it's a sacrifice, it
Mhm.
really is. And it's a hard adjustment to date someone in law enforcement because also, like you said, when we come home, our battery is drained a lot.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that you might have been curious about his day, like, what'd you do today and what happened? And sometimes we don't
Mhm.
care to really talk about it. So
Yeah.
not only are you kind of feeling a little bit like an outsider,
Mhm.
but then when you want to learn more, it's like we don't really want to talk about it. And
Mhm.
I know a lot of police wives who have, had somewhat of a hard time, but it also is like for us to have someone that supports us and loves us that we can come home to is like beyond, it's just something that you can't describe.
Sorry, someone's at my door.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead.
Mm,
Sorry at all.
do more editing.
We're just life is life and with that in mind, what we were just talking about, just like
Mhm.
relationships with the officers. Do you have any advice for
Mm.
police wives who are starting families or entering a marriage with a police officer?
Yeah. There's so many things I wish I woulda known, and I don't mean to, like, plug my own podcast during this, but, like, um,
Please do. Please.
a gentleman, named Zachary Parrish, he died 5 weeks before Micah, up in Denver, and, his wife, Gracie, and I connected, and we did an episode called "A Letter to My Younger Self: Things That I Wish That I Had Known as a Police Wife." And, it's a really great conversation, and it's, like, exactly what we're talking about, and so, um, maybe we can put it in the show notes of which episode it is, but
Absolutely.
it's a ringer for this concept. I would say the overview of that would be, wherever you can have expectations conversations, learn to do that soon. That's not a skill. I don't think I even knew of that concept until, like, 8 years into our marriage where it was like, "Okay, we're going on vacation. um, what's going to make this a successful event for you? Like, how will we know that you had a great time? Or what do you want to make sure doesn't happen? Those kind of conversations. But like the holidays, right? So we had to move him and just celebrate him whenever he was off, like to the best of our ability. Um, and say, what is this going to look like? Or, hey, I'm feeling like, I'm not getting enough one-on-one time with you. Tell me more about your schedule. How could we work this in? I'm feeling a little neglected here. Those kind of things where you're just bringing it out into the open and not stuffing it down. I would also say on the flip side of that, that I wish that I had been more compassionate for him with how demanding the job is and the expectation that departments have. Suck it up, buttercup. Like your family is the last thing on our mind. You just need to do the job and protect the people. And, like when I remember there was a Christmas that he couldn't be there at, and I was just really, really sad. Um, it's funny, it's, like, making me sad thinking about it, but I just, hated watching him walk out the door that day in his uniform, and I know that I don't think I guilted him or shamed him, but I definitely, there was no brave face, you know? And I wish I would have understood the consequences of my emotional reaction to the demands of his work and how I could help him serve people. Like the idea that I was part of this equation or that I was serving or sacrificing in any way was like, kind of like twisting my mind in some ways. So I wish that I had known that I would be giving too and that if I could just encourage him like, "Hey, babe, no big deal. We'll celebrate this on the 26th. Go, be safe. Go take care of people. The kids and I will make other plans." And, um, I wish that I had just been more stable and encouraging about those things where I had to, sacrifice or take a hit for the job. Um I would say too, Micah was kind of um, a different bird in the processing of the job. Um, I feel like, I was Micah's best friend and he told me all the things about work. Like he would come home and we'd have dinner and he would just start unloading the day. And um
That's
I,
good
I think it's
'cause
really
that's
good.
not that's not
I don't
th
think it's
that
normal.
typical. Yeah.
But I think it's really good because it gave me more grace for him. It gave me more context for what he was going through. It helped me like have a picture of all the people and you call everybody by their last names. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I probably should have made like a flip book, like so I could hear these stories and think about who these people were doing things he was doing things with. Um but I would encourage people, like, where you can bring your spouse in on something, bring them in, like, you're doing life together, and if you exclude them as a form of protection, you will shrivel the emotional intimacy of your marriage, and you'll starve them in a way, because you think that you're doing what's best for them, but really you're dissociating and disconnecting out of your marriage relationship or your dating relationship. So, I, he once said, because one time I had a friend over and he was sharing a story while she was there, and she was, like, giving amazing peanut gallery, like, gasping and big eyes and, "Oh my gosh," and, "Wow," and, like, I have a great, like, counselor face, right? Like, you can tell me the worst thing ever, and I'll be like, "I'm so sorry, like, tell me more about that." Like, I can contain that story for people, and so I did that for Micah, right? And he's like, "You don't even react to my stories," like,
He's like,
some
"Don't you think this is cool?"
or intense or yeah, and there would be times when he was telling me very traumatic calls that he went in, and I'm just standing there like, wow. But the best thing that I did for him was to hold space, you know? Just hold the space and let him talk about it and keep him from containing that in his body and it becoming a trauma that is trapped for him. Um, the other thing I recommend is go on a ride along. If your department allows it,
That's great advice.
go on a ride along. Like, my first one was with him on his birthday, and I thought it was a blast. I was like, "This is so cool. Like, how did you not take me before?" I loved watching him work. I loved getting to see for myself. I loved meeting all these people who I only knew their last names. I loved sitting through a briefing. I mean, it's a different world. Law enforcement is a different world, and if you are a civilian, you don't have context for it, and a ride along will change your life. Um even, like, I remember watching, people watch him and interact with him and thinking like, "Why are you acting like that? Like, that's my husband, chill out," you know? But no, he was he's in the uniform and the badge, and he's got the authority and the gun, and, um, it helped me to have a different perspective of him and the authority that he carried day to day and what that weight was for him. And so, go on a ride along.
Yeah, that's great advice. I honestly, obviously tell people wanting to get into law enforcement to go on a ride along, but I never thought about it for like a spouse or a partner. Like that is such a good idea because you
Mhm.
can see if I was with somebody and they came to a ride along and it wasn't like a busy shift, I'd be like, dang it. Like you think
Mm.
it like I would want them to see like the busy shift. But
Yeah,
um
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, they're like, wait, this isn't as cool as you mean to tell me that. But,
Even when it's not crazy, it's
it's
still
still different
such a
for you.
different
Yeah,
knife and
yeah,
perspective. Yeah, because he didn't have a crazy night, but just being with him and the radio and the car and
yeah.
watching people, and he was always teaching me too, like he would he would do DUI, like, if we would have drinks, at home in the kitchen,
Oh, he
we'd be
would
like,
do
make him
DUIs.
walk the line and checking my eyes, gaze, and
Hey,
he
it's
like
practice.
I mean, and so, like, to see those kind of things where we were having conversations at home or he was practicing a new skill on me and then going out and seeing it, like, in real life, and it was like, "Oh, wow," it
Yes.
changed my perspective a lot in a great way.
I love that, and I
I
think
just
that
wish I'd done it sooner.
yeah, I mean, it's such good advice. It's such a balance, and the fact that you could be his sounding board and that he was comfortable enough to talk to you as a police officer, I'll tell you, that means it it probably meant a lot to him because
Yeah.
like you said, you're drained so much that, or maybe you feel like people don't really care to hear
Mm,
about your day. So for you to have listened, I speaking on his behalf, I know that it probably meant
mhm.
a lot to him.
Thank you, Haley.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk now about February 5th, 2018.
Okay.
If you can remember and whatever you're comfortable with,
Mhm.
tell us about the morning of February 5th and what
Okay.
your day began like.
Okay. Well, the day before was the Super Bowl. We hosted a big party. We had a bunch of friends and family over. Um, and it was really sweet because Micah wasn't into PDA, but he wanted to hold my hand that night, like in front of everybody. And I really think that there was something divine in him that was drawing him towards the family. Because the last 5 days, he couldn't get enough of us. I mean, he was like, "Let's go on a date. Let's take the kids to this activity. Let's go here." And he was just sweet and giving me compliments and, like, I mean, he was a nice guy, but it was, like, above and beyond the last few days before he died.
Wow.
And so that next morning, on the 5th, he had battle, beat auto theft through law enforcement, and he always had that on Mondays, and he, would leave early on those days. He was plain clothes, and, he kissed me goodbye, and it kinda woke me up just a little bit, and I remember, like, propping myself up on my elbow and watching him walk up the stairs, and that was the last time I ever saw him. Um, and then I went on to have, like, a super normal mom day. Folding laundry. It had been a huge weekend. I'd done a volunteer training for that ministry I was talking about. We'd had a baby shower for my sisters-in-law. I mean, it had just been jam-packed. And so I was like, I need a breather. And so I'm actually watching This Is Us, and I had saved this episode because I knew it was very emotional and I wanted to really pay attention to it. And that day, I watched the episode where Jack dies from smoke inhalation in This Is Us, and Rebecca tells the triplets that their dad died. Um,
Wow.
and then I was gonna need that. I was gonna need that model of, like, how in the heck do I do this? Um, Thinking I'm still going through a normal day, I pick up the kids from carpool, and, I'm getting my daughter ready for ballet class, and I'm talking to a friend and just listening to her process a recent miscarriage. She's really upset, she's crying on the phone, and I'm shimmying my daughter into her tights, and because I'm talking to my friend about this really hard thing, I start to miss phone calls, but I'm like, I don't wanna interrupt her, like, this is like, but then like 8 calls, like successive calls, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, friend, but I've gotta see what's going on." And it was Micah's mom, and she said, "You've gotta come to the hospital, Micah's been shot." And I was like, "Where?" Because in my mind, Mr. Officer Safety, he always wore that vest, and I was, hoping in that moment, even though he'd already passed away and we didn't know it, like, that it had been a limb, like something like that. And she's panicking. She's driving herself to the hospital, and she's breathless, and she tells me the hospital. I'm like, "No, not the hospital. Where on his body?" And she said, "His chest." And I was like, "Okay," like, I'm building up this reserve in my mind that is, going to protect me from this outcome of, ultimate loss. And I'm like, "He wore his vest, hit him in the chest." Um And then I just kind of snap into action and I start telling the kids, kind of imagining like, okay, he's probably going into surgery. Like, we'll have a long night in the hospital and sit with him. I was like, guys, your dad's been shot. We're going to the hospital. Get your snacks, get your tablets, get a hoodie. Like, we got to go. And I mean, I just start running around the house pulling things together, and I'm good in a crisis, and so I can kind of contain my emotions, and I'm planning to drive myself to the hospital. And then, um, I miss another call, and it's an unknown number, and I ignore it, and then he calls right back, and I was like, "Oh, that's bad." And it's the undersheriff, and he had gone to our last known address, which we were not at, and the knock at the door came, and I wasn't home. And he's like, "I'm here at what I thought was your house, and you're not there." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Wait for me. Do not go. Wait for me." Um, and I was like, it should be standard practice that no one drives themselves to the hospital after an officer-involved shooting.
Agreed. Agreed. Yep.
But I wasn't thinking that. I was like, "Okay, I'm good in, crisis. I'm driving. I'll be fine. We just gotta get there." And I was like, "Oh, no." I was like, "He doesn't think I can drive." That is also very, very bad. And, the kids have my brother and sister roll up and thankfully buckle the kids into the car seat, and so they're in the car, and I'm pacing the driveway, and, um, he just, like, slides around the corner in the cruiser and, like, tumbles out of the car, and his face just says the whole story right there, and he said, "Rachel, we did everything we could, and we couldn't save him. He's gone." And my world exploded into a million pieces, and I got into that cruiser with him, and I just screamed and, like, pulled at my clothes and wailed, and, um, for, like, 15 minutes on the way to the hospital, that was my time to just keen and grieve, because as soon as we got to the hospital, it was news and SWAT, and the hospital was on lockdown, and now it was this massive public event, and there was, like, I had no idea what to expect, and I was in for the ride of my life.
How old were your kids at this time?
They were 7.
7. And you're just getting her ready for dance class. You're just doing laundry and you're just going about your day.
Yeah.
Did they follow you to the hospital or did you keep them with you or
So my brother and sister-in-law followed the cruiser behind, and I'm grateful for that because I don't think that I would have had that moment to, like, just scream cry if they had been in the car with me. Um, and I needed that because I just was about to I felt like that the shock. They say that a trauma like that is like a TBI for your brain, and I just everything began to change, and I was gonna need every bit of reserve and strength and, train for the trial you're not yet in, right? I was gonna need all of it.
so Micah was part of the El Paso County Task Force and his coworkers and him were pursuing a known gang member when the subject opened fire at them and that's what struck Micah in the chest. Did so when he got struck, it went through his vest
So just a
or
little clarification. So they
yes,
didn't
thanks.
know, the suspect was trying to get into MS-13 yet. They
Okay.
thought that he had, like, some speeding tickets and, like, maybe something super misdemeanor minor. They didn't know he was high on meth. They didn't know he had a gun in his hoodie. They'd been following him all day for, like, 8 or 10 hours,
Okay.
um, and thought that they had come upon a point, where it was safe to take him. And so, Micah and his partner Scott were the 2 officers. There was 10 officers on scene. They had all posted up around, this apartment complex in different points, and, Scott went to grab him, and Zatina, like, grabbed the gun in his hoodie, slipped Scott, and popped him in the hip immediately, went to execute him, and Micah grabbed the gun, like, in that moment, and between, like shooting Scott in the hip, the bullets, semi-automatic bullets, right? And, like, he hit, um, 2 other officers and Micah and a civilian who was passing by, coming home, walking in the area, permanently paralyzed him.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and he hit Micah actually, like, maybe an inch, above his vest, kind of in the neck, and hit that major artery, and, Micah immediately went down.
How many officers in total were shot? Just two or
4. So
four?
Micah,
Okay.
Scott, who is seriously wounded and continues with a significant disability to this day, and then,
Okay.
one of the officers was shot in, like, his glute with
Uh,
shrapnel, and then one was shot in the groin, and they both recovered.
and then one of them was able to shoot the suspect and kill him on scene.
Yep, so in that time, Micah gave him time. Micah wrestling gave him time,
Of course.
and, 3 of them returned fire,
Yeah.
kinda running up in that moment, and all of this happened in seconds. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just
Seconds.
seconds.
And how was Micah taken to the hospital? Do you know?
Actually got to meet with the person who was first on scene to the call and did his CPR, and, I mean, they were doing everything they could immediately, but he told me he saw the life leave Micah's eyes at the scene. But they took him to the hospital via ambulance and gave him every life-saving measure, blood donation. They opened his chest for internal CPR, like, the trauma surgeon from the OR met with me and told me everything. They had thrown everything at the rescue that they possibly could and couldn't bring him back.
Because I know other officers that have been the person there, the first one on
Mm,
scene,
mm,
to try to save another
yeah,
officer who's been shot.
yeah.
And I know the toll that that takes on them.
Mhm.
Because I'm getting emotional
It's
because you
okay, we'll just do it together, we're both there.
yeah, because I know like the last thing that you want to be is like that person that
Mm,
was the one who you feel like you could have been the one to save them. And to carry them to either, your car or the ambulance.
mm.
Um, so I'm glad you got to talk to that person because
Yeah, me too.
I know
Yeah,
that that person I
yeah.
know, I don't even know who they are, but I know that they probably did everything they could, and I know that they
Mhm.
probably think about that moment all the time.
Yeah. I remember reading the ambulance report, and it talked about, shocking him and the interventions and everything that they were doing, and that was, hard to read, but, I remember this little notation in the notes, and it was like, "There was never any response, there were no signs of life." And that was, like, such a comfort to me to know that he had passed so quickly, that he hadn't suffered, that he hadn't had to struggle with terror or, lingering and that the Lord just took him.
I was gonna ask if that made you feel better.
Yeah.
So you answered that for me. Like you said, it's, instead of suffering and hanging on,
Mhm,
I do agree with you. I feel like maybe it's for the best that it was
mm,
no pain and faster like that.
mhm,
When you got to the hospital, were you able to see him?
mm. Yeah, I actually had to fight to see him, because it's a crime scene, and I think the silver lining of that was because the suspect was dead, they were willing to let me see him, touch him because, you know, the next step was autopsy. And so if if Zatina had not passed away, there would be a trial and they would need the evidence and I can't contaminate the scene, right? Like the line of duty complications and loss are just crazy.
Yeah.
Um and they were trying to protect me and they didn't want me to see him. And I just was like full of fire. And I said, do not try to give me a gift that I don't want. Cause they were like, wait until he's, cleaned up and dressed and in the casket and the viewing at the funeral home. And I was like, no, I mean, I just was,
Yeah, no, I agree.
um, And I'm so grateful that I did because, they'd been doing CPR like 30 minutes ago and he was still warm and he looked like he was sleeping. And I got to hold him and tell him how proud I was of him and kiss him and just have that moment. And I'm so glad because after he had the autopsy and, was the formaldehyde preservation process and was in the casket, like he just didn't look the same to me, you know? And
Yeah.
so those are some really precious moments for me.
I was gonna ask you, and you don't have to tell us, but, um, do you remember anything? I know you said you were proud of him. Do you
Mhm.
remember is what you said to him when you saw him or before you had to leave the hospital room?
Oh, I just was like, "Look at you, baby. Look at you. Like, look what you did." Like, just seeing him give his life. Um, I think I just sat there kind of in this, like, wave of shock. Um, it was hospital policy that you can't be alone with a dead body, and so one of their staff was, like, standing in the back of the room,
Oh,
and I
that would
wish that
be
I had
yeah,
that space,
yeah,
to just be with him, but, um, I was like I had such an "F you" vibe, I was like, "I don't care, I'm doing whatever, I'm asking, for anything," like, I was just like,
good.
bulldozing my way through, I mean, the sheriff was like, "Can we release the photo of him to the media?" And I was like, "Well, that's why we take the pictures, isn't it?" And I just remember the sheriff being like, "You are a strong woman." Like, he just was shocked, and I was thinking, Micah told me that's what those pictures were for, that if you die, they put them on the news, and so everything was just, like,
Yeah,
ultra direct and, like, I'm in such shock, and so and I just, I mean, I held his hand and I kissed his forehead, and I just, um even at one time, like, the family came in all together to see him and say goodbye, and I held his feet under the sheet and, was like, I know this man from the bottom of the soles of his feet to the top of his head, like, every little detail about him, I just tried to soak it in one last time.
and were your kids able to come in there, or did you not want them to come in there?
I didn't let him come in that day, and that was probably one of my major regrets, because everybody was like, "Just wait till he's at the funeral home, and let him see him in the casket." And the reason that I didn't let him see him was because I had lost a grandparent the summer before, and it had been a very, in like, in-season death, right? Like, she was 96 or 97, and we'd done the hospice with her, and, um, they had been there, and they'd been there right before she passed, and it was a very calm, very peaceful funeral, and they had nightmares of her, like, trying to pull them into the casket, and I was
Yeah,
like, "I absolutely refuse, for you to have memories of your dad that will torment you or haunt you in any way." And I wish I'd let him see him there because he just looked like he was sleeping. And um the casket for me, like I was like, absolutely not. Like I had a horrible panic attack when I saw him and I didn't want to see him again. Which is very unusual for me because I feel like open caskets bring closure. And I usually will opt to see someone that I'm saying goodbye to. But I just fought, and a lot of people in the family were mad at me that I made that choice, but I was like, "I refuse for my children to have nightmares about their dad."
I actually agree with you, because, as you're telling the story, I'm just, like, thinking about people that I've seen pass in their casket, and it's just not the same,
Mhm,
Like, you wanna remember, like, the last memory that you saw of them, like, in life, and
mhm,
not that let that kind of be the last memory, and I think whatever you chose to do in the time was in
mm,
their best interest, and whatever you did was what you wanted to do at that time, and that was best.
That was all I knew was, you do the best that you can with what you have at the time, and that was what I had, and if I could go back, I would do that a little differently, but, um, I am glad that I didn't let him see him in the casket.
Yeah, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. And I can't even imagine how hard it was to explain this to 6-year-olds, to
Yeah.
children.
Mhm.
Um, I know that your son and your daughter remember, and I know that your daughter recalls a lot about that day, what happened, and she opened up on one of your podcast
Yeah.
episodes. How did that make you feel to hear her
Mm.
story and her be so strong in sharing her testimony?
Well, I mean, it's gut-wrenching hearing your child process the loss of their dad, and also so proud of her for the young woman that she's becoming, for her ability to process her grief. Like, her coping mechanism for a long time was just avoid the feelings, stay busy, have an activity, be with a friend, don't stop moving. And so to see her kind of coming into this more mature space where she can say, "This is how I felt, and this is what I needed, and, um, this is what I'm missing," and, um I just wanted to cheer for her, doing that. Um, and I think it was cathartic for both of us. Just, uh, I'd never heard her tell her version of the events before.
Right, it's her version from her point of view, and
Yeah,
it's so powerful, like,
yeah.
she did that podcast at what age was she when she 14 or
She was 13 or 14. I can't remember when we released it,
she's
but
so mature and
yeah,
so well spoken.
yeah, she did amazing.
How was it like telling your kids, like not you know what, not even telling your kids what happened, but, like, how was it like just going back to life, like, when they had to go back to school and stuff like that? Like
Terrible.
yeah,
Um, that whole, like, that kind of trauma becoming like a traumatic brain injury. I mean, I just lost my ability for executive functioning. I lost my ability to read. I would watch the same episode on a TV show just over and over. I'd be like, I don't remember it, so I guess I'll just restart it again." Like, I couldn't sleep. I would sometimes fall asleep at like 5 in the morning. I'm so grateful to the people in my life who would talk to me late at night during that time.
yeah,
Um, I a lot of people helped me. A lot of people helped me, and because of them, we have a level of resilience that not a lot of people have. And I just always wanna, like, sing their praises from the rooftops. Like, somebody took on making the kids lunches for, like, 12 weeks, through the rest of the
wow.
school year.
Just
Every
something so
every
small
week,
that could help you.
she would bring the box of the lunches, and Lala told me later, she said, "Mom, I love that so much. They would put sweet notes for me, like, inside of my lunch every day."
It's something so small that can really help a family during these times. It's like a card, a lunch, like, I know that that probably meant more to you than sending I know that that means a lot to you too, but, like, just helping the day to day with
Yeah,
you being a mom is
yeah.
so hard after that. I can't even
Just loving my kids and
yeah,
making places safe for them and giving them positive experiences, that was just, like, gold in my life at that time, but, I mean, every step was agony, like, driving them to school, I just remember, like, I used to pray for them every morning on the way to school before I dropped them off, and I just couldn't do it. Like, I was so grateful just to be out of the like, I'd gotten out of bed, I probably slept 90 minutes, um, and dragging them there and cursing carpool all the way through. Um, and then, um, I mean, every step and anything that reminded me or felt like life before he was there was so painful. Dinner was painful. The empty chair at the table was painful. The empty side of my bed hurt. Like the empty, passenger seat in the car. Like and he would always make me drive because, you drive a lot for your work, and
Yes.
he would race
Yes.
me. He would race me to the car and jump in the passenger seat.
Oh, I love that.
I would be like, "Seriously?" And
I
then,
love
so
that.
it's the passenger seat that was empty. I was never a passenger princess. And, just, like, also a ton of law enforcement things, and because I spoke at his funeral, people saw that I could speak and invited me to a lot of events, and, I mean, we received a lot of gifts. People were incredibly generous. Um, so trying to show up for them, trying to say thank you, trying to kinda keep the issue in the public eye for a little bit longer than the news cycle, because usually it's just like, "Yep, they died. Oh, that sucks, and we're
Yeah,
moving on?" So
yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
"Where I have the opportunity, I will tell the story. You need be quiet. Come lay down. Come lay down."
And
And
speaking
you
of
hear
those
her whining?
coworkers, I cannot, no.
Okay, perfect. I won't worry about it then.
And speaking of those coworkers, that were there on that day,
Mhm.
uh, did you and those wives, like, share, like, a special bond?
You know, I actually just really bonded with his team.
Okay. So the
Not that
team
I
themselves.
Yeah, not that I didn't connect with spouses. I did some, but, like, I think for both of us, it was like they connected me to this piece of Micah that was missing. And, like, I didn't even realize how used to, like, knowing all the nitty-gritty going on in our city. Like, these people were killed and this is our investigation, or like this is a, crime trend that we're working on. And I was just like, it was like my own personal police blotter was gone. And I was used to hearing about it. And so I'd be like,
Right.
I need you guys to tell me what's going on because there's just this hole. And then I think for them, I was the closest person to Micah. And
100%, yeah.
in some ways, I think I helped their healing process and just I forgave them of their survivor's guilt. Like, I didn't hold them responsible. They didn't do anything wrong. They had great tactics. They were prepared. They'd done it, dozens of times in other operations. But they, of course, carried the "it should have been me," you know?
Yeah. We all do.
And so I ended up through months afterwards, like, sitting with each of them individually and hearing their experience of the day and just hugging them and, giving them space because the department did well when it came to me and our family, but they didn't do well by the officers. They were never debriefed. They
I
never
was
had a
gonna ask
chance
you that later.
to
Yeah.
sit in a circle and talk about the day or get
Yeah.
therapy, and I still remember coming in to clean out his office, because the show must go on. Um, I think, like, 3 days after he died, and, they were all just, like, sitting there at their computers, like, doing this, like
All
I
back
mean,
to
they're
work. Back to the
like,
grind.
but just
Crazy.
staring, just, like, staring into the computer, and nobody's doing anything. They said they
Mhm.
felt better being together than they did if they had stayed home, which I believe that. But,
Yeah, it's like a team, like, it's like you don't wanna leave your team
Mhm.
during that time, and I do know
Yeah,
how that feels, but to go to back to work is just, I guess it was their choice, but I mean, my god, they needed they
I
needed
think they should
your
have had a mandated leave.
they should've,
Yeah,
100%, but to have
yeah.
your, like, blessing and you to talk to them, I'm sure that they were just as thankful for that moment as you were.
Yeah, I actually went on 2, like, what would we call those? Like, law enforcement trainings, and I gave the keynote. Like Colorado auto theft investigation, I gave their keynote a couple times, um, and so I actually kinda got to go away with them for the weekend, and, the organization put me up in the hotel, and so I go do my thing while they were taking classes and getting certifications, and then in the evening, we'd all of us, like a big team of us, would go to dinner, and then we'd play poker at night at the hotel and just be human beings with each other, and, I think it was really good for all of us, like, just to be close, to process, and there were things where people were able to process their loss in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise if I hadn't been there and kinda given them permission to open the door.
100% because it takes someone like you to do that, to make people feel comfortable on any side, whether it's the law enforcement side, the spouse side,
Mm,
the friend side, the family side. Sometimes in this world, we can feel like we're not allowed to be sad.
mhm.
Like we have to go right back to work.
Jump right back
Show
in.
must go on. And, it is important for someone to like the fact that you were the strong one, even though what you were going through, but to give these officers grace is
Yeah, and I probably leaned into that too far in some ways. It was very comfortable for me. It was, like they say, one of the ways that you can process your grief is helping other people. And that was one of the ways that I helped other people was just to listen to them. And, I already had this like counseling education and was working on my practice and I didn't continue seeing people during this time. But I think that that part of me that's like, no, tell me your story
right.
was very present, and my liaison was amazing. She's like, "You need to stop taking care of these people. Like, we're supposed to take care of you." But I think that in many ways, it was reciprocal for me and my heart, and I wouldn't trade those memories or those days for the world. And even now, like, only once or twice a year, but I still get together with this team and we play poker, like, around Micah's anniversary.
I
Um
love that.
Mhm. I mean, it's just I think we're gonna be a part of each other's life until the end, honestly. Like, I think we are literally forever bonded by this experience and trauma, and, um, these are my trauma buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that being around you probably makes them feel like they're being around him, like you said.
Mm.
And it's like c- for them, I'm sure it's a comfort. No, and then they're probably, thinking he would be happy that I'm with Rachel right now. He'd be so happy that we're hanging out with her and that she feels comfortable to
Mhm.
call us and
Yeah.
that we're
Well,
friends.
and because he died, everybody told me all the things that they liked about him, that maybe you wouldn't tell your coworker as you're sitting
Right.
side by side. And I just think, there was this one guy on his team, and Micah would be like, "He's so grumpy, he's so gruff, like, he's just like, this rock of a person." And I got to know him, and he was like, yeah, he's hard on the outside, but he's a giant teddy bear, and he's heartbroken for Micah's death,
Yeah.
and like, I got healing from that because like, you can kinda take up a grudge for your spouse or your person or whatever, like, when
Oh,
you're
100%.
annoyed with somebody at work,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, if only Micah had known how much he respected him and just, thought he was great and loved working with him and just had a heart like, he'd had a lifetime of law enforcement and had locked his heart away in a box, and he can be gruff and grumpy, and he's also really tender, and he's still a
Right.
friend, and, um, those things were really healing and redemptive for me to get to learn to know these people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, what is just something that you would like our listeners to know about Micah and who he was?
I think this is my heart for seeing the restoration of the gap between the public and the police, because Micah just had this level of integrity that was exceptional. Um, he was a role model, he was a leader. After he died, even people that he had arrested came to me and said, "Your husband was one of the best cops I've ever interacted with."
That is beyond amazing.
I don't think you can get a better testimonial than your clientele saying you did a great
Wow. Oh, wow. That is incredible.
um, and it, um, it's a model, I think, for officers to look to and to, um, embrace when they wanna be cynical. when they wanna give up, and I talk about Micah's trauma, like, he really struggled with sleep, and he would, like, he would talk to me and say things that he wouldn't remember the next day, and, the therapist later is like, "Rachel, I really think that's his trauma," and he went to a therapist. He went to the staff therapist. I'm so grateful for her, and he started really acknowledging the anxiety that had built over the career time that he just couldn't manage by himself anymore, and I want that to be a model of mental health support for officers currently, where they're like, "Suck it up, get back to the job." Like, "No, that's not how you stay in this career." I think our average, um, time on the force right now in one of our local agencies is between 2 to 3 years. Like, the second-year officers are FTOs now. Like, it's
Right.
crazy
Right.
because
No, same
everybody
with
is, like,
my agency.
retired early or left or, transferred agencies or, we need people who can go the distance in this job because we're better law enforcement officers when you have more experience and when you can kind of check the young bucks who are coming up in the ranks and provide that guidance and mentorship to them. And so, don't mishandle your mental health. That is everyone's health. Your mental health is everyone's health, and your interactions with the public and the likelihood that you're going to blow your cover someday and create a situation is so much higher if you are not taking care of yourself and acknowledging your need for that. So that's what I want, Micah's story and his legacy to be is for integrity and for wellness for the officers.
Absolutely. And it's like, any day could be it. And
Mm,
to go to work and not like love what you do is like not it's not worth it.
mhm,
So to remember why you joined and what you're doing,
mhm,
like Micah, is so important because it sounds like he really was meant for this job and he really loved this job
yeah,
and obviously loved his family and everything. But you can go in grace and you can go in being proud
mhm,
instead of being like that person who's grumpy, like we
mhm,
said. So you've really taken your pain, turned it into purpose, like being here now. And I can't thank you enough. This podcast is so far, you're healing me. I
mhm.
can't even imagine how many people you've helped in all your speaking. Um, your voice and strength. You started a podcast called the Hopecast Podcast. Can you
Mhm.
tell us more about your podcast and that
Yeah,
platform?
yeah. It's called The Hope Cast with Rachel Flick, and it is about post traumatic growth and resilience. We talk a lot about post traumatic stress disorder, but there's an option for growth if you can integrate the principles of resilience. And so I tell stories of overcomers who model resilience and have gone through a wide variety of types of hardship and have come out on the other side with a message of hope and healing.
And where can my listeners find your
Yeah.
podcast if they want to take a listen?
So it's on like everywhere that you like to listen to your podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. It's on my website, rachelflick.com. And you can find me with my name, Rachel spelled RachaelFlick on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the places. Um, and yeah, I hope that it really um gets to go out into the world and do its work to help people heal.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I know that sharing, obviously, well, I don't know, but I'm assuming that sharing the story takes a special person. I don't think everyone um and I don't blame them, has the strength to be able to relive that and recount it. And I just appreciate you for doing what you
Mhm,
do because so many people need to hear it. And so many people need to know that they have an ally, like in
mhm,
someone else that's been through it or something similar. And, you know, it's just, it's just a lot. But if you're comfortable with sharing, I just want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
Um, how are your kids doing today?
They've really grown into some cool people who I legitimately enjoy having conversations with, going to dinner with, going on vacation. Um, you know, they're like actually fun and
I love that.
they're kind and smart and Levi is a very close copy of his dad and
Wow.
same athletic abilities and those kind of things and Eliana is honestly a lot like a girl version of her dad in many ways. I had these fair-skinned, blue-eyed, freckled babies that just like their dad. I'm like, "You'd never know I participated, but I gave it a good shot."
Copy
I,
paste.
copy paste and, they really have shown that resilience, and when I said, like, the people, who came alongside of us after Micah died are a reason that we have a level of resilience that is remarkable. Like, you were pouring into my kids. They were showing up for them, they were watching them so that I could rest and heal. They were taking them places, they were giving them opportunities, they were, you know, giving us tickets to go see the Broncos or, Disney on Ice or something like that. The Gary Sinise Foundation is incredible. They've sent us to Disney twice. It's so generous. So those things, play and fun, really help heal, and, that they are, um kids grieve differently than adults. Adults have, like, this set point of grieving, and then we kinda grieve what was, and we're growing into a new. Kids grieve each developmental stage differently, right? It's like this new revelation of who their dad would have been, and they're becoming more intelligent and mature and more able to process his loss in ways that they haven't before. So we continue to have these really deep, meaningful conversations, and they wrestle with the problem of pain and heartache in this world like everybody else, but, they're good people. I like them.
I love that. That you're like, you know what? They're cool kids.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because they've been through so much, but I'm sure that they've matured probably wise beyond their years. And
Yeah. They have a deep empathy that you don't
yeah,
get without loss.
yeah. And they're probably really great friends and
Mhm.
obviously really great kids. And it's
Mhm.
just nice to hear that they're doing well and that
Thank you.
you all are doing well. It's really good to hear and comforting to hear. What goals do you have for the future and what can
Mhm.
we expect from you, Rachel?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, I'm writing a book and, they don't let you, cling on to your title. But currently it's called Return to Honor: Bridging the Gap Between the Public and the Police, and I just have this big heart to bring all of the parties that are involved in this cultural conflict that need resolution and healing and reconciliation to the table and to this meaningful conversation. Like, I think that we're ready for another level of healing beyond what we've been able to accomplish so far, and I've been on the Law Enforcement Transparency Advisory Commission for Colorado Springs Police Department for 5 years now, and it has been this deep dive into policing and tactics and strategy and agency function, and, it's just led me to have a lot of ideas and conclusions about ways that we can police well, and where can agencies bring up their level and, become more excellent, and so that's what I'm working on right now, and I just finished the book proposal and the manuscript is like, 25,000 words in. It's like such a project, such a baby to write a book,
Yes,
but um and I'm also creating a sleep cast. I don't know, have you heard of a sleep cast?
I have.
So I'm gonna give that away. It's almost released. It'll probably be close to being released by the time your episode is out. I just have a heart for people who struggle to sleep. I have wrestled with insomnia
Me
my whole
too.
life and gotten so much help from those sleep casts on the websites and the apps that provide them, and I just wanna gift that. I wanna gift good sleep to people who are struggling and, um, give them the opportunity to just drift off and have deep restorative sleep. So they can come to my website and find that at rachelflick.com.
And honestly, your voice is very soothing. Like, it is
Thank
very
you.
comforting
Thank
and
you.
soothing. I'm definitely I need it because I work nights and I struggle with sleep just
Mhm.
like you and my day because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just girl.
Mhm. It's hard,
Uh,
and all that
yeah,
cortisol is not your friend when it comes to sleeping.
girl. Yes. So, I just want to thank you again
Mhm.
for being here, sharing your story, and for all that you have done and sharing your story. Um, you really took on this tragedy and made it like a role and
Yeah.
made it like a something that we don't have to I don't it's hard to say. It's like we don't have to look at you like this is your circumstance. Like you have made it so much more and you are making it so much more by helping others and like your therapist said, I hope you take some time for yourself too because you are helping so many other people. um I hope you help yourself too because you deserve it and you're amazing and all the good you're giving out, I hope you get back tenfold. And I just
Thank
again
you.
want to thank you so so much for being here and giving me a lot of time. I went over the time, I'm sorry, I
It
just
was a great
had
conversation.
so many questions and so blessed to have you here, and I'm so glad that your family's doing okay and that you guys are living in Micah's honor. And I'm just really proud of you and your family. And I thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Thank you for the work that you're doing to support the Thin Blue Line and law enforcement and just encourage people and that you're turning your pain into purpose too.
Yeah, that's all we can do, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. You guys go give her a follow. I'll link all her stuff below and go check her out and stay tuned for all her new projects.